Yeah, man, I used to get nervous to do solo episodes, but when you do them enough times, like anything, they become so much fun. Cool? All right, let's change some lives. Welcome back to the Future Self podcast. Welcome to season 4, episode 14. We are back in the studio doing a solo episode. It's been 3 months since the last solo episode. I feel like I haven't sat down with you guys, had a conversation, had a chat, and I'm sure you're probably not seated. You're probably walking on the treadmill, walking outside, driving in the car, maybe watching a movie with this on in the background. But you've tuned in. You have tuned in, and that's what is important. The basis of today's episode, I just wanted to spill the last 2 to 3 months of thoughts, notes, quotes, and ideas I've been having. I feel like the last few episodes have been so amazing in an interview style perspective and a conversation of bouncing ideas and deep exploring, but I haven't done one where I've just spilled ideas to you and thoughts. I haven't done that in a while. Of course, I have my computer and there's a few notes I want to go over. Now, this is the first thing. Before we go through anything today, I want to teach you my tools when it comes to utilizing podcasts as a source of insight, education, and inspiration. When I listen to a podcast, I always have my notes app on my phone open. Anytime I hear a thought, an idea, or a sentence that really resonates with me or inspires me to have thoughts I've never had before, I instantly jot it down. Now, I'll either jot it down word for word so I can quote it to you guys or a friend or a client, or I'll just jot down an abbreviated version so I can remember it. A lot of the time, people get really overwhelmed reading a book or listening to a podcast because there's so much information. There's so much to take in, absorb, and then sort in your brain. That's not how you utilize that material. More times than not, I'll listen to a podcast and maybe gain 2 or 3 quotes and points. That's it. I'll listen maybe 20 to 60 minutes at a time and I'll gain 1 or 2 things. That's how you go about it. You're not supposed to remember every point. You're not supposed to remember every statement, every quote. I'm sure you don't even remember what episode this is. It's episode 14, and I said it only 2 or 3 minutes ago. So when you listen to material, have the notes app open. Take this information down. Allow yourself to absorb it, then reflect back to it, go back to it, utilize it in the future. If we're always trying to remember and store everything in our brain, that's where things get really, really messy. Now, point 1 I really want to dive into, and it is just a push of the branding. And when I mean a push of the branding, I'm talking about the mission of the branding, what Future Self stands for. Showing up for your future self is about creating a way to your week that in the long term excels you forwards, not puts you behind. Future self is not about stressing always of the future or the days coming. It is about creating less stress for that version of you. It's the idea of doing what you maybe don't want to now because you know you're not going to want to do it later. It is that idea of what does the Friday version of me want? What does the Saturday version of me want? Last week when I left everything to Saturday and it was my day off, I either had so much shit to do on Saturday or I just procrastinated and then nothing got done. It's that idea of food. How do I want to feel tomorrow? Your sleep. What energy do I want to have tomorrow? Your weights. How do I want to look tomorrow? It's that idea of, fuck, I love myself so much today, but I love myself tomorrow just that little bit more. It's about creating those methods and systems that allow the tomorrow you to thrive. More often than not, that does look like doing things now so you don't have to tomorrow, planning so you know what's on tomorrow, getting ahead so you're not dragging your heels and you're not behind tomorrow. I just want to keep pushing this idea of future self because in the coaching industry and the industry of health and fitness, the idea of long term is becoming more and more prominent. It's becoming more of the trend that everyone is focusing on, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm so excited that long term is becoming more of the focus because that is everything. Out are the days, or at least going out are the days of weight loss challenges and quick fixes and living in an unrealistic stint for a 6 to 12 week period. Everyone is starting to realize, holy shit, I need to change and develop long-term habits. It is about the systems and methods you can create to live long-term. One of the ideas I've been working on in the year of 25 is becoming a 2-minute and 2-second person. Now, what does that mean? It's a question I've asked a lot of guests, and I always ask on social media highlight question boxes. Are you a 2-minute and 2-second person or a minute and 58-second person? 4 seconds difference. It's not much at all, but it is astronomically massive, the difference between those two individuals. Are you someone that when you're going for a run for 30 minutes, you stop at 28 minutes or you stop at 31 minutes? Are you someone that when you're sharing calories with a friend, do you stop at 9 calories or 11 calories? Are you someone that pushes that little bit extra or that little bit less? The best analogy I can give, and I often give to explain insight into the question, is to do with ice baths. Are you someone who gets out at 1 minute and 58 seconds, or do you get out at 2 minutes and 2 seconds? Because the 4 seconds is not the representation of the better person. It's the person that holds themselves accountable to what's going to be better for their future. My mission this year is to become a 2-minute and 2-second person with my running, with my fitness, my business, my podcasts, my relationships, my friends, my family, my achievements. I am pushing myself to become that person that not only does what I say I'm going to do, I do a little bit more. Now, you got to be careful with that mindset, right? Because a little bit more never actually ends. You can do a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. It can be a little bit dangerous because when's the end, right? There is no end. And that's where that regulation of what is me giving up versus what is me pushing myself a little bit more. That's the thought process. It's just that tiny bit more, not a massive amount, but if I set something, I've created myself to be a person that says it and then does it. I now am creating myself to be a person that says it and always does it, if not a tiny bit more. And I think that representation is a really good idea when you're doing a workout with a friend or you're doing some cardio or some HIIT. Do you conk out that 1 calorie before or that 1 calorie after? Do you conk out that 10 seconds before or that 10 seconds after? When you're doing sprints, do you slow down after you've run past that line or 10 meters before and you're finished at that line? That's the idea. That's the thought process behind it. The 2-minute and 2-second movement for me is just about elevating my standard. It's about pushing myself. I've learned recently training partners are super important. Why? Because it pushes me to be that 2-minute and 2-second person. For the last 4 years, I have not tracked a weights program the whole time. And I've pushed myself really hard. But funny enough, I've jumped on a program. I'm on phase 2 now after 6-week blocks. I didn't realize that you push a little bit harder on a program. I didn't realize that for me. I know that for majority, but I thought I was above that a little bit. Like, no, I can regulate. I can push myself. I'm that guy. I can lift that load, but not like a program. The accountability of doing things as if someone's watching. Now, sometimes I get called out from mates in a joking light. You never do fitness without posting it. It's like, yeah, no, that's probably true. Because posting it for me is accountability. If I'm posting something and I'm a leader of an field or people, I have clients, I am a leader, an inspiration, an insight giver to clients, I want to lead at the front. So I need to treat it like they're watching. That's why I post. If I do a 10-kilometer run for me, at a 7-minute pace, that's not good for me. For some people, that's fucking insane. And anyone running 10Ks, big congrats to you. So that's why I think, well, I'm going to post this. I want it to be 4 minutes something, or at least 5 minutes something. It's really good accountability for me. Now, linking on to what I was saying before about how you should intake information from podcasting, I only say that because that's how I do it. I have a whole note slide here of thoughts, quotes, and insights from podcasts I've listened to. So when I'm reading from this computer, these are thoughts I've had when I go for a walk and I put in a podcast, regardless of who I'm listening to. And I have that moment of, fuck, that's a great point. Well, that's a good thought. I didn't think that. So today's episode is just listing and talking through those points. There's no real structure to today. It might go from this to that to there to over here. But I think these are just really interesting points, or at least give you some insight into the things that I capture over my week. Someone I'm very interested in, and I think is a gift to the idea of trauma and childhood-based research, is Dr. Gabor Mate. He said a quote on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I thought was super interesting. When we are triggered, our learnt brain systems can go offline, as to why we can act from default, not the work we put in. The thicker and stronger these brain circuits become, the less likely this is to happen. It can take years to thicken these brain circuits, not moments or months. So what I took away from this was super interesting, and it's one of those really nice ideas that when you're learning something or trying to become a better person, other individuals and even yourself can put this pressure on you that that's who you are now. You need to act from that point. When I first stopped drinking, I would still have an occasional drink and I would still party here and there, but I felt this pressure from everyone. Well, you're learning about this, you're preaching this, you can't do that. In my head, I'm like, well, that's really interesting. I'm learning about this, but why do I still result back to default? You got to think about it for a second. It's default. It's what is already there. You're trying to learn a new pathway. Anyone who's ever moved schools, cities, countries, or locations, you don't know the area at all until you travel around it, navigate your way through it, and you do it again and you realize, okay, I know this area a little bit, but I still got lost. Then you do it again. Oh, okay, I know the classrooms are over there. I've been there and back many times. And you do it enough times, you don't even think about it. You don't think where to go. You don't think of how to get there. If anything, you think of the fastest route to get there because you know it. Brain circuits and pathways are similar when it comes to learning new things. The more you do it, rehearse it, practice it, grow it, the stronger it becomes, the more accessible it is. If you're someone who operates from anger and you normally snap, or you operate from emotions and you normally really emotionally outlet on people, you practicing calm, breathing, and navigating through logic and not emotions will take time. You'll do it the first time and then you'll result back to your default. You'll do it again and it might last a little bit longer, then you'll go back to your default. Then you'll do it again, not go back to your default and be able to do it again, then go back. And it's this back and forward until eventually you don't end up coming back anymore. You only move forwards because it's a skill learnt and it's a new navigated pathway you can access. That pressure of learning something new, you cannot put on yourself to stick to it 100% from the get-go. If you learn not to snap and outlet through your emotions, you're probably going to do it a few more times until it becomes something you just don't go back to. Now, I always talk about emotional regulation and emotionally outletting when someone does something that pisses you off and you instantly snap back at them. Everyone's done that. Everyone's been there. I used to be that person until I would slow down my reaction and think about it. I'd still do it a little bit. And then eventually I get to this point that when someone does something, I won't act straight away because more times than not, when I act straight away, that feels from emotions. I'll sit back, I'll reflect on it, I'll honor how I feel and what I would have done in that point, but I'll also think about it and think of what's going to be the best pathway more often than not for my future self. That is a skill of practice. It's taken a long time to develop my brain pathways to go from this instant reaction to this slow. It wasn't easy, but it 100% can happen with practice, consistency, and progressive overload in the sense of challenging it more and more. You might be able to do it in small situations and then bigger situations and then absolutely massive situations. I think it's really special what he said. Because of that pressure, we feel that we're trying to learn something, but why do I keep going back to my old ways? And you normally see this with weight loss or food, binging, with vices of drinking and drugs, with relationships and toxic people and friendships. We find that we're learning something, but it's not yet comfortable or it's not yet normal. It's like, but we know it. You know it, but the pathways and the circuits aren't strong enough to allow you to navigate through those. It's almost like there's construction happening in this pathway you know you should be accessing, but this road's already built. So, like water, we take the easiest route. You just walk down that road. The construction happens more and more, and then this gets stronger. And eventually, this side is stronger and a better pathway than this one. You start walking the left side, and then the right side crumbles. And eventually, what was there as a default can actually just break up. You lose that pathway, it's gone. It's something you don't access and navigate through anymore. So if you're learning something new, please don't be too hard on yourself if you're not being perfect about that system, regardless of whatever it is. If it's routine, reaction, navigation, understanding, tool accessing, fucking anything, don't be too hard on yourself that you're not navigating through that straight away, but you can't let it go. You have to keep pushing through the new navigation to build that brain circuit. One of the most common bits of education I do with almost every client is the ability and skill to say no. One of the hardest things in life is to say no. Saying no feels like we're letting down other individuals. And for a lot of people, based on how they were raised and their childhood experience, that is really hard. But one thing I've been noticing more recent than not is we struggle to say no to be kind. And in return for that, we build resentment, hatred, bitterness, annoyance, or agitation more often than not towards that individual. The friendship that we once cherished because we don't say no to be a nice friend, in quotations, to be that good friend, to not let them down, you slowly start to resent that friendship because you always feel the pressure, the expectation. You're always pushed to doing things you don't want to do at the fault of your own hand because you didn't learn to say no. Now that's tricky, right? Because it's almost a little bit contradicting. We don't say no because we don't want to let them down. But then by not saying no, it annoys us because we're forced into doing what we don't want to do. So then we end up bitching about this person or this situation we were forced into doing from our own hand, from our inability to say no. And if you really think about it, how is that being a good friend and how is that a useful pathway to walk down? We're scared to say no, to let someone down. So then we don't say no and we say yes. But then in return, we end up bitching about this person because we resent ourselves or them because we're forced into doing something we don't want to do. See how that doesn't work out? Now, one of the biggest things I learnt as a coach and as someone that wants the best for people is learning the skill to upset someone's emotions in the moment, to gain respect in the long term, a better outcome in the long term, or a more intense care in the long term. Respecting someone can come from knowing they have an opinion, they stand strong on their views, and they're going to tell it to you straight. They're not going to bullshit about it. Now, on the surface, there are these people that say yes to everything, and it seems like everyone loves them, but subconsciously they probably don't. Yes, they might be nicer to them in all these aspects that seem like they like them more, but they probably subconsciously like you more when you learn to say no because they respect you. Now, respect and being liked don't actually go hand in hand. And that's a really tricky aspect because we all want to be liked. It's a human need to feel wanted and that we're contributing and we're adding to another human. Respect doesn't always reflect that, but respect is a stronger and more intense attribute to gain from individuals. Learning to say no can feel so awkward, so cruel in the moment, and just this really disgusting, scary thing to do. But I promise you, it will end up being better for you long term. If someone only likes you because you're always available and saying yes, And that's not something internally you want. You have to take yourself out of that. They don't like you for you. They like you for what you allow. You got to think of that for a second. They're not actually liking you for you because you're not being true to who you are. You're being someone that they want you to be, and that's why they like you. So if you say no and you lose that friendship, in reality, what's the loss? Because you're not losing someone that likes you for you. This is a really wonderful segue into this next point. When I talked back on that point just before of being useful, being liked. Now, I've been solo almost for 10 months. I've lived solo for maybe 12 to 13 now, as in just mostly on my own. And then I traveled, but I don't get lonely. There hasn't been one period in the past 12 months, honestly, where I felt lonely. But what I've noticed more recently than not, I struggle when I don't feel useful, helpful, or impactful. Over the past few weeks, it's actually been different here in Bali than it was the first time. I've set my weeks up a lot more streamlined, a lot more routine, a lot more regimented. So things run better and I have more time. I have more time to myself now than I ever have before. Before running the business and it got really serious. I'm not talking about childhood or growing up. In recent adult life, I have more time for myself now than I have before. And with that, it's brought a new experience of more troubles. Now, how weird is that? I'm not as busy as I used to be because I'm not on the gym floor anymore. I'm not working 80 or 90-hour weeks. I'm not spread thin. But I feel like I have more troubles and problems now than I did back then. And I was really stuck on it the last few weeks. Why did this person's action impact me more? Why did this post on social media get to me? Why did this conversation with a friend highlight something that I probably wouldn't have picked up on before? And there's 2 points I realized. The first thing, I'm a lot more educated. I'm a lot more insightful. So things that I used to not be aware of would go over my head. I now analyze a little bit more because I know a little bit more. But the second thing is I have more time to think, reflect, and feel. And that for me, that's been scary as fuck. Being busy is great, but eventually you drink too much of that tonic and it will be the downfall that poisons you. Though not being busy or spread thin, having more time to think can also be scary too. If you use it in a way where you're not laying in bed rotting, scrolling social media and avoiding. Recently, I've been really feeling my feelings, thinking my thoughts and reflecting on reflections. And I was like, well, why am I feeling like I have more problems? Why does life feel like there's more issues now than almost ever before? And it's like, wow, I'm feeling and thinking more than I ever have before. And I started feeling a little bit pessimistic and a little bit enclosed, as if, holy shit, are things crumpling down, or why am I getting this enclosing feeling again? Am I slipping back into the depression I had a few years ago? What's going on? Till I altered the way I viewed it. I changed my perception, my perspective. Okay, I feel like I have more problems because I'm thinking and feeling more. How beautiful is that? I care more. I'm someone who feels. I'm someone who reflects. I'm impacted by thoughts, feelings, and situations. So rather than looking at it as friction, I'm looking at it as insight to grow, to understand myself better. Yes, it's nice to not have problems in conversations because you're so busy you don't really care about it. But it's also nice to have problems felt in conversations because you care so much. I can learn more about what gets to me, why it gets to me. I felt recently a few aspects of betrayal, which I'm not really going to get into, but just the overarching aspect of betrayal or going behind your back or something along those lines. And that really got to me. I was thinking in my head, I'm 4 years into self-development. Why would one person betraying me or going behind my back impact me? Like, why does that get to me? And I thought, well, I don't get lonely, but I'm impacted by humans because I like to feel useful, helpful, and impactful. And being betrayed means that someone doesn't see that value I have. And that's what got to me. And it was a hard past 2 weeks, but it taught me so much. It's taught me so much. And it's been really nice. And I think there's a point I have in here. Yeah, I wrote it down the other day from a podcast I was listening to. The more people I have met, influencers and successful individuals, the more I have learnt they have highs in one area and lows in the other. Yet we often only fixate on the highs that they have. I've made this example before. Mike Tyson was relentless in boxing. People idolize that. But he also, as he expressed these days in his older age, was scared, self-conscious and all these aspects. Tiger Woods is a great golfer, but he was a really bad husband and partner and really bad with vices and substance. So we look at these people, I really want that. And I said it in the last episode. If you're going to compare, you have to compare to the whole picture. The more I've met these influencers and people in Bali that seem like they've got it all together, man, the more I've learned that they don't. Or that they have problems just like you and me. Just like you and me. Why? Well, they're a human. Of course they're going to. But while they may have money in one area, they might have struggles in this area. While they have following and people who want them, they might be really insecure. And they're operating out of validation. And it's been a really nice realization for me to have, because more often than not, we idolize or pedestal these individuals and they've just got a high in one area, but they lack in another. They really, really lack in other areas. And like we all do, we have highs in some and we lack in others. You might look at me and think, well, he lives in Bali, he online coaches, he's living his dream. That's my high. Fucking oath. It's really special. But the lows might be, well, I'm young and I feel like I have all these mental aspects I struggle with that I notice a lot of other people don't. I feel like I really want to learn more, but the more I learn, the harder life can be to live in certain ways. The more I learn and educate myself, the harder it is to just appreciate someone for who they are, because I'm analyzing and breaking down, and what maybe used to just be a conversation I now see as bitching or projection or outletting or insecurity, and there's struggles with that. And a little bit cliche, but Elon Musk said that he lives with a storm in his head. So we look at him with a 400 something billion dollar evaluation. Wow, I really want that. And he says no one would want to live in his brain. It's like, well, I don't know what it's like to have a storm in your head, so maybe we wouldn't. And that's why I think it's a really beautiful thing. I don't think there's an issue in comparing. I think comparison is a great way to level up and also appreciate what you do well and maybe what you struggle with. But if you're going to compare to the whole picture, not just the high. Because if you compare to the high of multiple people, great at sport, good money, big social following, super good looking, beautiful partner, super great lifestyle, it's like you're going to always feel small, worthless, or secondary. And it's probably not the case. Yes, a great lifestyle, maybe a really bad connection with family. Yes, a beautiful looking partner, maybe super vicious and super toxic. So it is that thing of being able to see the full scope and range is really, really important. This is an amazing thought and slightly talked about amongst podcasters at the moment. The best version of you is grown in the flames of your hardest times. To be a better human, you have to go through hard times. The harder the times, the better the human. Reflecting back on my life, I very rarely look at the moments of ease and success and achievement as moments that define me or alter me or have progressed me as a person. It is the lowest moments, the worst moments, the flames of my hardest times that have grown me as a person. My lowest points of depression taught me so much about how I was operating, how I was treating myself, and how not okay the life I was living. My lowest moments with coaching, how not serious I was taking it, how I was taking it for granted, how my systems weren't great. I had no procedures. It is the flames of your hardest times that grow your character. Anytime I think back on a level up or progression I've had, it immediately is attached to a hard time. The podcast studio investment and setup is only as good as the faults I have made. I've filmed episodes and they've been totally wiped. I've recorded episodes, kept the visuals, lost the audio. I've dropped a camera and broken it. All these things. And what does that make me? It makes me conscious of backing things up. Makes me careful with how I treat my equipment. Makes me smart with how I operate my systems and the aspects of editing and all the backgrounds. The way I treat myself. I don't sit here and think of the highest highs, my fittest moments, my best lifts, my most routine weeks. I think of the defining moments of when I wasn't routine, when I was operating through self-hatred, self-disrespect, when I was being everything others wanted me to be and I wasn't being myself. The thing with all of this is no one wants to go through hard times because it sucks. It sucks. And I can hit you with that quote of rewire your perspective because this hard time's going to change your life. Yes, true. Doesn't feel true in the moment. And it's fucking hard in the moment. And that's okay. That's why there's hindsight. That's why we reflect, look back. Wow, all my defining moments come from the flames of my hardest moments in my life. So that quote a few episodes back, that the lowest version of me is responsible for the reason I am the way I am today, because he was the one that decided to make change, not me. Not the best version I've been so far in my 23 years of life. The lowest version I've ever been in my life is the reason that I am the way I am today. That I love who I am, my routine, my life, that I show up, that I grow, that I care for others, that I make impact, that I push for more. It is the result of him. I think back to almost all of my clients. Why do they reach out? Because they're at their lowest moment, in a struggle moment. Some of the most amazing change I've ever seen in humans come from their worst period of time. And it's hard to cherish that version of you because you might be in that version right now. But I think it's really beautiful that the hard time you're going through right now could propel your life more than anything. More than anything. This is a really amazing quote that I was reflecting on and I wrote last night. What if after every failure, this was the moment that changed it all? You finish this podcast episode, turn off your phone, and go and do exactly what you need to do. You put the fear of others aside, the comments from your mates behind you, and the worries of what if in the past. Because what if it does happen this time? If this is the moment you break through the barrier that has always held you back, if you elevate your standard into an area it's never been before. We focus so much on what if it doesn't, but for the first time in your life, what if it does? Imagine your life in 12 months' time. Imagine what if it does. What if the dream you have starts today with the first step being taken right now? I think it makes me so proud that you've tuned into this episode because you don't tune into a podcast to not level yourself up, or at least the Future Self podcast. You're not a subscriber. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you're a subscriber, you listen fortnightly to the long episodes and the second fortnight to the short clips, or weekly to the short clips, because you want to elevate and progress yourself. You're giving yourself a fighting chance. You're exposing yourself to material. So maybe that quote right there is the quote that you get your phone out, you open your notes app, and you write it down. What if? Not what if it doesn't. What if it does? What if it does? What if this is the time you finish this episode, you close your phone and you just go after it? You just go and do it. You don't procrastinate. You don't push back. You don't, I'll do it tomorrow. You don't, I'll do it Monday. What if this is the moment right now? It does. I remember I had this moment, the what if it does. And that's when everything changed for me. If you think, what if it doesn't? You're right. What if it doesn't? It probably isn't going to. But if you think, what if it does? You're right. probably is going to. I've seen humans learn they are, as a person, helpless. They have no power, no choice, no possibility, no potential for change or savior. However, this is a learnt trait over life. So where did it all go so damn wrong? I listened to this podcast episode where it expressed a study of a group of animals. More specifically, they were dogs. Both put in two different rooms. Both wearing collars. Both collars would electric shock the animals. There was a line of tape in the middle of the room, so left side and right side. Stay with me if you're listening. If you're on YouTube, you can see my hand movements and whatnot. The first group of dogs would be zapped when they're on the left side, and then when they moved to the right side, it would stop. The second group of dogs was zapped when they're on the left side, and also zapped when they're on the right side. So one group learnt after multiple shocks and multiple moments, I don't want to go on the left side, I'll stay on the right side. Or if they moved between the left and right side, when they felt the zap, they'd immediately move to the right. The other group of dogs, regardless of where they were consistently getting zapped. Now they put both the dogs in the room, delivered the zap or the electric shock, and the dogs who knew that if you moved to the other side, you wouldn't get zapped, they got up and moved to the other side. The dogs in the group that were consistently getting zapped laid on the floor and just accepted it. Learned helplessness. That group of dogs learnt they were helpless regardless. When they were put into that group, the collars were changed in a way that if the helpless learnt dogs moved to the right side, the zap would actually stop. But because they had learnt from that original room, regardless of where they went, they were going to get delivered an electric shock. They just laid down mostly on the left side and accepted it. Yet the other dogs were moving. All they had to do was try something new. Try it, change it, get up, move to the other side. But because they had learned they are helpless regardless, they stayed exactly where they were. So while one group of dogs was getting out of the way on the right side, stopped being zapped, the learned helpless dogs were just laying there knowing they were essentially helpless, which they weren't. And I thought that was so mind-blowing relating it to humans. Depending on your childhood, if you're growing up and you learned that and you're exposed to really negative, unfortunate things and periods of struggle and friction, you can carry that with you through your whole life. You can be put in this moment just like the dogs that no matter what you did, you're stuck. That is who you are helpless. And that is why we see older individuals carrying traits and aspects about their life and their person, themselves, that are just not okay and super toxic, but that's all they know. And unfortunately, they learnt helplessness over their life. They're helpless. They can't help themselves. There's no change. There's no difference. There's no opportunity. There's no room for growth. That is just who they are. They have learnt that's just how things are. There's nothing that can change. And it can't be more wrong. They learnt that, unfortunately, at the hand of the cards they were dealt through the life they've been exposed to, but it's not forever. This is why I am so intensely linked and advocating you always have a choice, and there is so much power in choice. I used to romanticize suicide, and I've spoken about this before. And now reflecting back on it, I just want to little brother that version of me so much, because I just think, well, why did you feel so helpless and stuck? Because I don't feel like that now. And that's what's so dangerous about learnt helplessness and being caught in an exposure where you don't think things can change, because things can always change. Always change. But learning that study and then reflecting on it, depression and struggle and anxiety, it makes sense why people stay where they are. Although I dislike it and I wish they didn't think and feel that way, it makes sense. Why? Because they've learnt helplessness. They feel like it can't change. And that's why coaches are so important, and good friends, and educating yourself and learning. Like, I am no more special than you. I was a kid that partied, disrespected myself, did drugs, bashed myself in the gym, all these negative aspects, didn't sleep, pulled all-nighters, would wake up 4 a.m. after a 2-hour sleep, go to work, all these things. That was me. I'd bed rot and just scroll. I would do things that wasn't good for me. I've been in your position before. It's not learned helplessness, though, because anything can change. There is power in choice. You listen to one podcast, it could change your life. You read one book, your whole world expands. You meet a new friend, you think a new idea, you do something different. Einstein's cliche statement of insanity is do the same thing and expect a different outcome. It is ludicrous to think doing the same thing will change what's going to happen. If you're not happy where you are, you need to change it. And you can change it because there is power in choice, and choice is always available. Not the choices we want or ideally would like to make, but choice is always available. And that study to me represented just so many people I know, almost all my clients, they felt helpless until they did that one thing. They made that one decision. I'm going to reach out. I need help. I'm going to bite the bullet and go for it. And their life has changed forever. What they thought was forever, one choice, one action, one little thing of difference changed everything. And that's why coaching for me is so important. Oh, fuck, man. It gave me goosebumps. I can hear it in the tone of my voice how much this topic means to me, because there's always choice, and choice can change your life. And I think hopefully exposing you to this learned helplessness idea that you're not helpless. You can always help yourself. And sometimes by helping yourself, it is asking for help on the outside. And I don't mean asking for help where you go into a Headspace organization, which is a great organization, but helping yourself could be reading one book, listening to one 10-minute podcast episode. Holy fuck, I've never thought that idea before. Wait a second. If I've never thought that idea before, I wonder what else is out there that I don't know. Okay. Wow, so the life I know and I'm living right now maybe isn't the way life has to be. Maybe there's more beauty, there's more experiences, there's more love, there's more emotions, there's more happiness out there. You just don't know it yet because you don't know it yet. And that's why you expose yourself to podcasts, to books, to information. So on that idea of going after it, this is something I thought was really important, because sometimes when you wish for something, it's not presented to you in the ways that you hope. Let me explain with this point I wrote down the other week. The most beautiful idea we have heard, but often forget, is wishing for something, but not realizing that wish is often granted different to how we hope. You wish for resilience, so you were given hard tests. You wish for kindness, so you are intensely humbled. You wish for strength, so you are given burdens to carry. You wish for courage, so you are given anxiety to choose. You wish for success, so you are given the chance to take risks. What you often wish is presented to you in ways that build these traits. They're not just given to you as workless gifts. How wild is that concept? What we want is often possible through doing what we don't want. Who the hell wants to work hard? A lot of people don't. But by working hard, it builds resilience. Who wants to be more courageous? Probably a lot of people. But do we want to take more risks? That's the idea. That mindset and that frame of mind is such a wonderful thought, because when something's happening that we don't want to have happen, maybe it's the opportunity to then gift us what we do want to have happen. I'm not feeling very connected to my friends. I'm not very happy in these moments. Wait a second. My friends aren't inviting me places. They're talking about me behind my back. I'm not feeling the support and warmth of my friends. You were just wishing for new friends. You've now been given the opportunity. Go look for new friends because your current friends are doing these things. I want to look better and feel better. Okay. Well, you don't just get that. You have to work for that. That's why in these moments of struggle and hardship and friction, there's a lot more to it than just what is at the surface. Maybe that moment is what you wish for. I started feeling a lot more friction towards the end of my in-person coaching career. With where I was working, there was a lot more frictions and things popping up. Maybe that was the result of my subconscious actions I wasn't sure about. Or maybe it was my wish being granted through the opportunity of showing me, well, you wished to travel the world and be an online coach and impact thousands of lives. Here's a little bit of friction to encourage you to take the risk and go for it. So remember, what you wish for more often than not isn't going to be gifted to you through a workless pursuit or gifted to you in the way you want. Sometimes you're going to have to do, and probably always, you're going to have to do what you don't want to do to gain that attribute. Everyone always says to me, it's so crazy how much you back yourself. It's like, yeah, appreciate that. It wasn't gifted to me. That came from pushing past a lot of people that doubted what I was doing or how I wanted to do it, or push past a lot of friction of people telling me otherwise. So now I've got the attribute I always dreamed of, but it came through the work of a way I probably wouldn't have dreamed for it to come about. I think I'm going to finish this episode up. I don't want this episode to go for too long. Covered a lot of topics, and I really liked this style. I miss the solo episodes. I love the guests. I love conversation, but I love these sit downs with you, more personal and just talk. Just share ideas. I really like this style of episode where it's an accumulation of my thoughts, quotes, and comments, because I expose myself to so many podcasts and books and newsletters and articles that I don't want to gatekeep this information. It's a little bit different to past episodes because in the past I've latched onto one topic, dove into just that one topic, and I might continue to do that in the future. But I think every now and then, amongst some solo Q&A episodes, I'm going to do a solo thought dump episode. If you tuned in on Spotify, please leave a 5-star rating. If you tuned in on YouTube, please subscribe, like the episode, share it with someone or share it to your story so I know that what I'm putting out is giving value. And the more you share, the more people interact and the community continues to grow. I'm going to leave you with one more quote that I wrote down, and that will be the episode done. Self-respect is the reason you will wake up and do what you need to do. Motivation isn't actually the reason you will do what you need to do, but will be the experience of how enjoyable doing what you need to do is. Change the perspective that motivation is your reason for action, and rather just the representation of how enjoyable the needed to be done action will be during at that time. Self-respect is your why. Motivation is your gauge for the enjoyment at that time. Remember, motivation only represents how easy and enjoyable it is. It doesn't represent if you will or won't do it. I appreciate you tuning in. I love you guys so much.